Hello, everyone. It is 6:34, and welcome to the July 27th, 2022 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission. This is a teleconference meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely. So our first part, we are going to introduce two new commissioners. I'm very excited to welcome them. I would like to take a moment to recognize Commissioner Mayrin Bunyajit. She's actually traveling this evening, so unfortunately she can't join us for this meeting. And Commissioner Kelsey Terrio, welcome. And would you like to say a few words? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but maybe introduce yourself and give us a little background.
Sure, no problem. So I'm Kelsey Terrio. Nice to see you all. I live in the Bellhaven neighborhood. I have two kids. I'm a teacher. I'm a history teacher at Mountain View High School. And then I guess one of the reasons why I was really interested in joining the commission, living in Bellhaven, I've been watching the new community center go up. And so I was interested in getting more involved in that. So that's why I'm here. Nice to meet you all, and I look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and commitment to Menlo Park, and nice to have representation from all across the Menlo Park community too. I really appreciate that. The other commissioners present are myself, Vice Chair Jennifer Baskin, Commissioner Aurora Brosnan, Commissioner Mark Bryman, Commissioner Peter Diepenbrock, and I believe that is it from our commission. Staff present includes Library and Community Services Director Sean Reinhardt, Assistant Library Services Director Nick Sheddo, Acting Assistant Community Services Director Rondell Howard, and Management Analyst Ashley Walker. Rondell is also the staff liaison for the commission. So Rondell, would you like to take a moment and provide instructions to the commission and any members of the public in attendance on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Baskin. So members of the commission should keep their cameras on and their microphones off until they are recognized by the chair. Commissioners should raise their hand to indicate that they would wish to speak. If a member of the public wishes to speak during a public comment period, please notify staff by using the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialing in, you can use the *9 function to engage, to have your public comments, and public comments will be heard in the order received and is limited to 3 minutes in length. When your turn for public comment has arrived, staff will unmute you.
Thank you, Rondell. So that leads us to public comment. So under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Rondell, do we have any public comments at this moment?
So at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on any item not on the agenda, please notify the staff liaison by using the raise hand function feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. And at the moment, I don't see any public comments, so you may continue.
Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item D. We'll move on to regular business. Under regular business, the Parks and Recreation Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Parks and Recreation Commission approval. So we will move on to what's normally very exciting, agenda item D1, where we will select a new Parks and Recreation Commission chair and vice chair. So staff report was provided for that. We were able to look that over beforehand. But just for information for any new members or to remind people, the commission selects a chair and vice chair each May. Our May meeting was canceled and the June meeting was a joint session on the MPCC project with the Library Commission. So we are now, brings us to July and ready to select new chair and vice chair. And as noted in the staff report, we will open the floor to nominations for the positions of chair and vice chair. So any commissioner may be nominated for either position. Nominations do not require a second. Commissioners who are nominated may accept or decline the nomination. Commissioners will cast votes for each position, and votes may only be cast for commissioners who are nominated. Staff will then tally the votes, and the commissioners who receive a majority of the votes will be selected for each position. Any clarifying questions from the commission before taking public comment? If you don't mind raising your hand, just so this way I can call on you if you have any questions ahead of a comment I might like to make on the matter. Sorry, I'm on my phone and scrolling and do not see anyone with a question. I guess actually at this time, Rondell, do we have any public comment on this item?
So at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify the staff liaison by using the raised hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're calling in, you can use the *9 to engage the raised hand function. And looking over, no public comment.
No public comments. Okay. So as being a tenured individual on the Parks and Recreation Commission, I just wanted to give a couple of comments on the role of chair. Historically, it was something that rotated amongst the commission members, and generally you were on the commission, so you felt comfortable taking on the role. And really, all it comes down to is running the meeting, and there's a lot of pros to that. Number one, you really do review the packet. You have plenty of support from city staff. Love that city staff has historically and always been extremely supportive of the chair and any needs. It's likely one other approximately 30-minute commitment during the month, because you will help prepare the agenda items and the agenda calendar. But again, that is something that, as serving on the commission, something you look forward to, because it's items that you do want to tackle during the commission, and it gives you some ability to move certain items up and kind of help and get those across the finish line. And it really can be done by even someone, Kelsey, I'll bring this up for you, who is new. I, for one, served as chair for a year. I've served as vice chair for 2 years. Would honestly be willing to serve if it was something that someone felt uncomfortable having never served as chair before. I would be happy to serve as vice chair again to kind of attend some of those planning meetings, or to help get a chair feeling comfortable and up to speed, and kind of coaching them as to what the first couple of meetings would feel like and happy to run. So I just wanted to put that out there as some supportive comments for how awesome it is to be chair. So I would love to open the floor for nominations for Parks and Recreation Commission chair. You can nominate yourself as well. Someone doesn't have to nominate you. And just a reminder, we don't have a chair because our chair has moved on to the Planning Commission, I believe.
Vice Chair Baskin, if I could just offer a couple of maybe reassuring words from the staff side. We are here to support whoever the chair is for the Parks and Recreation Commission, And I think I heard this expressed in the library commission meeting recently, where they selected their chair and vice chair. The job of the chair is really as involving or as not involving as you would like it to be. There really is only that half hour a month sort of planning meeting where you sit down with the staff and go over the agenda. The staff prepares the agenda and also prepares sort of a chair notes that help you with the running of the meeting. So all the sorts of Robert's Rules of Order kind of things we lay out with you, and we're here to support during the meetings as well. The only other duty I can think is on occasion, the chair might be asked to talk about the work plan to the city council, which is again a short discussion or presentation with the city council. There's not really a lot of ceremonial obligations, though maybe it would be cooler if there was, if we had a nice sash for the chair of the commission. And we can also, we're happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions about what the role would entail. We're happy to answer them.
I guess I don't have any historical context on this. If we don't nominate a chair, does it automatically rotate? I mean,
if I could offer that, I do think rotating is, that's sort of like the intent, kind of set forth by council. It's not required, but the idea is for it to rotate among all the members. And typically it's once a year, but at any point, I think the commission could establish a different rotation. But very similar to the city council, they rotate the mayor seat once a year. They kind of have a little bit more of a precedent of it. It's sort of a certain order that they do it. But again, it's essential for the commission to have a chair, and vice chair. The policy set forth by the city council is that the commission shall select a chair and vice chair. So if it's more doable for the commission to kind of establish some kind of rotation so that everyone feels like, they're sort of sharing it. But again, it's something I think ideally we would come out of this meeting with someone who kind of steps forward to take on the role.
yeah, I do think we're going to kind of have to result with that, because I think if no one feels up to nominate, I do think we'll kind of just run into this roadblock again. And I think, yes, historically, we've never had an issue with someone serving as chair. And also, it's not required. I think one other thing is conflicts do come up, and the idea is that you should be able to attend every meeting. But if you can't, that's the purpose why there is a vice chair, to then be able to chair meetings. So the spirit is, if you are here and attending, really, it's not that much more of a commitment, and it's something that's super well supportive, and something that's that is ultimately kind of thought of as accepted by someone who accepts the position on a commission. Would anyone be willing to accept the role as chair?
If I may, I'd like to suggest that, as far as obligation is concerned, as you suggested, Jennifer, I signed up for this. I'm probably the least officious person I know. Running meetings, if there were more to it than running meetings, I might feel better about it. But, calling people by, commissioner, and I don't know, I love what we do. I love talking about it, and I love trying to help guide the city towards things. But, you know, if there's nobody willing to do it, then I'll do it.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that. Thank you for stepping up. At this point, do we have anyone else that has interest? I know we've kind of discussed, and probably there was a previous meeting where we sort of discussed this before. But really appreciate that, Mark. At this point, I think now, Rondell, we would be calling for a vote.
Before you do that, well, maybe we'll handle the chair, but then we're going to return to the vice chair as well.
Yes, I think we
Okay.
do voting for the chair first, and then
Yeah.
once we establish the chair, we move on to vice chair.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Actually, would someone like to, do we need a motion to vote?
It sounds like Commissioner Ryman nominated himself, and you called for other nominations. Hearing none, I think you can just go ahead and vote on the nomination.
Okay, so at this point, we'll vote. We will vote on the nomination of Commissioner Bryman for chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I believe we will do a Nick will take a vote verbally, correct?
Rondell will, but yes.
Oh,
So
Rondell-
we'll
I'm
do
sorry.
a roll call vote.
Rondell,
It's
you will be
okay.
taking the vote verbally.
Yes, so Commissioner Diepenbrock,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrio. Did I say that right?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Commissioner Bronson
Yes.
and Commissioner Baskin.
Yes.
So that is 4 votes.
Don't forget Commissioner Bryman.
Oh, he can vote for himself. I'm sorry. Commissioner Bryman.
No.
Let the record show that 4 votes constitutes a majority.
Yeah. Those win.
Congratulations. So now I will open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Again, I would like to stay true to what I said before. I will happily nominate myself for vice chair, but also encourage, if anyone does want to learn the ropes, I encourage you to nominate yourself for vice chair, because it is a really, really great way to get your feet wet and have an opportunity to chair if the chair is not present. So would anyone like to nominate themselves for vice chair? Okay, then. Well, I think we may have ourselves a vice chair too. At this point, Rondell, would you like to take a verbal vote on Jennifer Baskin nominating herself for Parks and Recreation Commission vice chair?
Yes. So Commissioner Deaconbrock, do you vote for Commissioner Baskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryman?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrio?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bronson?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Congratulations.
Did you call for Commissioner Baskin?
I am so sorry. I don't know. Commissioner Baskin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Unanimous. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, great. And the chair and vice chair will begin their terms at the August 2022 meeting, so next month. So moving on to our next.
Vice Chair Baskin, if I may, before we leave this item, just a thought, totally up to the commission whether you want this to happen, but staff could, if this is helpful, at next month's meeting, bring back an item that maybe sketches out what a annual rotation might look like, maybe based on seniority or something like that, so that the commission can kind of have a look at that. So we're happy to do that and kind of emulate what the city council's model is, so that everyone kind of knows what to expect. I mean, each commission each year would need to actually make the selections, and it could change, but at least give a little some kind of rotation to kind of build on. So we're happy to do that if you think that will help.
That would be fantastic. And it would give kind of a roadmap and something that can kind of be discussed by the commission along the way. And it gives it a roadmap for some time out to be able to plan for it, especially if commissioners change, or, you know, the chair term is not necessarily aligned with our seating terms. So appreciate that. Yes, that would be wonderful. And we'll bring that back for next meeting.
Super, we'll do that. Thank you.
Great. So moving on to agenda item D2, we will be approving the minutes for the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission of April 27th, 2022, and the special joint meeting of the Library Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission of June 22 of 2022. The minutes were provided via the email attachment. Rondell, do we have any public comment on this item?
So at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify the staff liaison by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. And at this moment, there are no comments.
Okay. Were there any edits or changes any commissioners wanted to make to either minutes? Please use the raised hand feature if anyone had any. And I am not seeing. Anyone have any edits? So at this point, would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve the minutes? I believe we'll have to approve them separately. So we'll start with the minutes of the April 20th, or can we do both at the same time?
I think you can do both at the same time.
Okay, fantastic, since there were no edits to either. Okay, do we have a commissioner who would like to make a motion to approve both the minutes of the April 27th and June 22nd, 2022 meetings? Aurora? And do we have a second? Mark, thank you. And Rondell, would you like to take a verbal vote?
Yes, so let's start with, if you would like to approve, let's see, please let me know. Let's start with Commissioner Deaconbrock. How do you vote?
I approve, yes.
Commissioner Bronson,
Yes, approved.
Commissioner Bryman,
Aye.
Commissioner Baskin.
I unfortunately was absent from both, so I would prefer to abstain. I believe we still have a majority if I abstain from voting, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And then
Just can I
Commissioner,
just interject though, just a point of clarification. It's not required to abstain if you were not present. You can vote even if you weren't present.
yes,
Just for the
I
record.
actually looked that up once because you're voting on like the note taker's ability to have well represented the meeting, even though you weren't there. I prefer to abstain just because I wasn't in attendance, but thank you.
and Commissioner Terrio.
Yes, approve.
So minutes from last two April and the last commission meetings have been approved with Commissioner Baskin not approving them, not
Or
voting for them.
Thank you.
Abstaining. But yeah.
And so we'll move on to item D3, Parks and Recreation Commission Work Plan. This was also provided via staff report on our email attachment. And Assistant Director Nick Sheddo will introduce this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Baskin. So as mentioned in the staff report, the COVID-19 pandemic and the disruption to the commission meetings led to a delay in developing and approving the commission's work plan. So the most recently approved work plan covered the years 2018 to 2020. The commission formed a subcommittee in October of 2021 to update the work plan and brought it back to the full commission in January of this year, where the commission recommended it to the city council for approval. At their February 8th meeting this year, the city council reviewed the work plan and gave feedback, but didn't approve it at that time. So staff brought it back to the commission in April and gave a presentation which had the council's feedback in it. And then we had a change in chair where our commission chair, who was sort of spearheading the subcommittee, moved to a different commission. So with the chair position vacant from the end of April, that sort of delayed the review. And then we had a canceled meeting, and then we had a joint meeting where we were dealing with other matters. So that's sort of the saga of the commission work plan. And I have the commission approved work plan that was presented to the city council, which I can pull up, and I will in just a moment here. And I also have the presentation from the April meeting, which sort of has the council's feedback on that work plan. And so the hope is that tonight, with those two documents, and I will be able to display them after we take public comment here, that we can get to a work plan that we can then resubmit to the city council for their approval. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Baskin.
Thank you. Rondell, at this time, do we have any public comment on this item?
So at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify the staff by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're dialing in, you can use *9 to engage the raise hand function. And at the moment, we do not have any comments.
So with the vice chair's permission, I will go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see that. Can you see okay, so this is the work plan that the commission developed that was presented to the city council. It had looks like 6 goals here that you can see in this first section, and then sort of specific examples or of what we were talking about in the goals. I think the idea was to keep it succinct, but also to provide a little bit of detail in these specific examples. So I'll pull up an editable version here in a second, and we can start editing it if you'd like. Can you see this that says Commission Work Plan Update on it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the presentation that staff made to the commission in April on the draft work plan, which has the same thing in the goals here and the specific examples. And then here were the sort of the questions that came back from the city council, where they kind of had, they wanted a little more detail about what the commission meant about a few of these items. So they were wondering what expanding park facilities mean, what does neighboring community imply, and how we would define diverse community perspectives. and just some suggestions that they would like to see. The city council members who commented wanted the commission to focus on resident input, and that focusing on providing high quality programs and services for all Menlo Park residents, and to put that into the, there was a suggestion that that be worked into the work plan, and that there was sort of a need to gather and incorporate resident input on a couple of different issues, both the field allocation and the field usage, and pool operations. Now we have, we, meaning the city and the department, have through the community survey, which the commission has reviewed, been gathering that input, and we'll be presenting, we presented preliminary results to both commissions at the last meeting, and we will present more detailed results at a future Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. So with that, I will stop sharing for a moment and see if anybody has questions or comments, and then I will also pull up sort of an editable version of the Parks and the sort of draft work plan that we had there, and I can start typing away on it if you'd like.
That was really good, Nick. Thank you so much. I think that was super helpful to provide the list of comments from the city council. My thought here is to address those kind of head on in terms of the way we look at what the work plan goals are and what we're working on now. So that kind of, you know, we're coming back and answering their questions, and that's like the low hanging fruit. They said, this is the input, this is some things we have, let's make sure we incorporate and clarify. And those are some good guiding principles for us to use, you know, as we're gussying these up, shall I say. Does that sound about right to the commission?
Yes, Vice Chair Baskin, if I may, just from staff's perspective, I had the opportunity to speak to the city council member who actually put these questions together, and to get a little more insight, you know, sort of like what's envisioned here. And I think you kind of, I can just confirm that basically the work plan is sound. They just had like these questions and a couple suggestions to incorporate. So I think the approach you just described, you know, would align with what that council member was kind of seeking. So if you narrowly focus in on that, I think you probably can, that would achieve, you know, basically what the feedback is asking for.
Oh, fantastic.
So if I might, I'm gonna share a Word version of the work plan. I can't have both. I can't have the comments. I wish I could have. I'm not Zoom adept enough to have the comments and the working copy here on the screen at the same time, but I can read the comments. So the first thing, the first comment was, what does expand park facilities mean? So let's see, where is enhance, maintain? Okay, so it's in this bullet point that says maintain, upgrade, and expand city parks and facilities.
So it's, what does that expand mean? I think what we were thinking of is some of the things that we did recently. Peter, I think this lays out to some things you've put out there, but the idea of, we brought pickleball, and that was not necessarily something that was a long-term plan, but we were expanding based upon community input and trends and what was going on. The idea of, what was the other one? Disc golf. So I think some of the ideas of expanding really align more with what can we be doing recreationally to keep up with maybe what other communities are doing, or what the general public might like or need or want. in our facilities. Mark?
I was on this subcommittee with Dave before he went to planning. And I think part of the confusion for us is, if we're to get specific about which exactly are the facilities we want to expand, we're kind of getting into opinions. And so I'm wondering, Sean and Nick, if, as Jennifer suggests, that the language isn't, instead of saying expand, we simply say explore and continue to explore further city and expand possibilities for further city park facilities, right? I hate to say, well, we should be, we've got a lot of things that we've discussed over the years, but the snack shack should be bigger. The bathroom in Sharon Heights should be smaller. I mean, it's, I think we're splitting hairs here. And I wonder if we can't just come up with language that appeases them, but essentially means the same thing.
Yeah, because expand, I think, yeah, you're right. If you take it just at face value, whether they want us to expand the green areas, like, no. So what about something like explore opportunities for city parks and facilities?
Well,
or explore?
We've been exploring, as you suggest, continue to explore, right? Or continue to engage, or whatever the word is.
I believe Commissioner Brosnan has her hand up.
Thank you, Sean. So there are a couple of inputs that I can see might relate to this line item. One is the survey that has been out recently to gather residents' opinions on what parks and library services should look like, which sort of further feeds into getting inputs from not just the commission, but from the community as well. So, I think that some of the outcomes of, the analysis of that survey could feed into what the meaning of maintain, upgrade, and expand city parks and facilities is. And the second thing is the name of the measure escapes me at the moment, but a few months ago, I believe we had some funding approved for parks and parks upgrades. I don't know if Nick or Sean, you could refresh my memory as to what that was called. I think it was $12 million.
Yeah, so Measure T was passed by Menlo Park voters, I believe, in 2003 or thereabout. And the bond issuances were done in multiple tranches. And most recently, the last tranche of $12 million was authorized by council.
Okay. So maybe if we're looking at being more specific in our wording, this could be something like carry forward the execution of the programs and initiatives under, the Measure T bond release, the most recent. And maybe, I don't know if it's the same item or a different one, taking into incorporating inputs from community surveys and community feedback, not just from the survey, but also the other sorts of feedback avenues that we have. For instance, I think 2 meetings ago, there was a lot of feedback on the cutting down of trees in one of the parks to make room for other facilities. So, maybe that item is something around taking into consideration the feedback of surveys and other feedback avenues, from the community in the decision making or in the recommendations that come from the commission. And I always overword things, so maybe somebody can help me to reel it in there.
Would it help if I go ahead.
No, I just want to say, I think the idea of making instead of maybe 6 line items in that section, if it's a little more, each one is potentially more comprehensive. In other words, we combine 2 or 3 of them into one, right? And we can, maybe that's the answer, as you suggest. Continue to explore further city park facilities with, with community input. Diverse community.
If I may, this is all excellent discussion. It's always very challenging to like wordsmith in a group. And I know that the subcommittee, which was former Chair Thomas and Commissioner Bryman, did great work coming up with this verbiage. And so, I think the feedback from the council was really a few tweaks, but on this one in particular, because the question is about expanding, and I think that sort of upends the whole sentence, I'd like to just maybe offer a possible response here based on what I'm hearing the intent of this one really was. And it comes actually straight from the commission's priorities as assigned by City Council. So, and it's in the staff report, there is a hyperlink to the commission policy set forth by council, and it kind of describes the commission priorities, one of which is modification of existing programs and facilities to meet developing community needs. So it almost seems to me like you could just take that priority verbatim and put it in there, and it's like virtually unassailable because it's one of your stated priorities. And it really kind of gets at, I think, what's been discussed here. And then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The verbiage is already there, and it's already been approved by council.
Wait, Dick, before you erase the maintain and.
I'm not going to erase anything. That's why I have track changes on. So you'll be able
Oh,
to, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm not going to erase it.
Yeah, why don't we just add modify? Start with maintain. I don't see what it says now. Maintain, improve. What did it say? Maintain and
It said
improve?
maintain, upgrade, and expand city parks and facilities.
But why not maintain, upgrade, and modify existing programs and facilities to meet evolving community needs?
Yeah, that seems pretty good, actually.
Right? That's both. That's 2 in 1, and we knock it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you-
and I do think we should be maintaining and upgrading, and so that doesn't, it doesn't. I like that is spelled out in it. Oh yeah, so add. I love your language, Sean. Add that in where Mark had it. I like it.
So,
Right, so I
let me,
believe I heard maintain, upgrade, and modify existing programs and facilities to meet developing community needs.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, and I think what's good about that is it maintains, the work plan bullet point that the commission put together, and it answers the question of what does expand mean?
Mhm.
And what you're saying is it means modify existing programs and facilities to meet developing community needs.
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
so let me make sure I got this right. Maintain, upgrade, and modify existing programs and facilities.
Correct. To
And
meet
facilities to
to
meet
meet
evolving community needs.
Yeah, I apologize. I might have said evolving, but it's developing community needs.
Developing.
Is the language in the priorities. They're almost interchangeable, but if you want to go verbatim, it's developing.
Okay, so maintain, upgrade, and modify existing programs and facilities to meet developing community needs. All right, so the next comment from the council was, what does neighboring community imply? And so I'm going to see here, it's down in the specific examples where it says balance Bellhaven versus neighboring community needs in the new Menlo Park Community Center.
Yeah, I didn't understand that when Dave and I were working on it. That made no sense to me. I think the confusion was that it's not neighboring communities, right? It's sub communities within Menlo Park. In other words, it's Bellhaven, it's Sharon Heights, it's Linfield Oaks, it's right. It's the entirety of the community, right? Every neighborhood within the community.
Can you repeat the comment again, Sean? Sorry about that.
Sure, I can.
Nick.
It's the comment was, what does neighboring community imply? And I think perhaps the concern, and Sean can check me on this, the concern was that neighboring community might be referring to, say, East Palo Alto or Redwood City. In other words, that wasn't clear to the council member.
Yeah, I think that's what it implies, but that's not, we shouldn't be concerned with Redwood City or, right? I mean,
The way I sort of perceive this is that perhaps the intent had something to do with sort of the concern that there may be some inequitable priorities for members outside of the Bellhaven community, with consideration to the new community center that's going up. So, perhaps I don't really feel that Bellhaven specifically should be called out here, but maybe this should be something more around balance the equity for opportunities to community, to library and parks and recreation services to all districts across the districts within Menlo Park, something like to that effect.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think that's exactly right. We shouldn't be calling any one area out, right? We want to balance all districts in terms of new facilities, right?
Yeah, so I think there's something simpler there. Maybe it is like balance the community needs across all districts, across all Menlo Park districts in the new community center.
My only caveat there is I would maybe be careful about evoking districts in the language because that's a little more political kind of sounding.
Stick with more community, stick with communities then?
Or maybe, like all neighborhoods or just all residents in all areas of the city. Right now I'm kind of, it kind of says the same thing without evoke, because district evokes just more of like kind of the political elections process. There were these, you may recall from last month's joint meeting that there were some guiding principles that had been kind of taken from other policy statements by the city council. And so one of those is actually from the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan, which you might just crib this, which it says, let's see. It says each new park or facility or significant renovation of an existing park or facility should contribute to satisfying the recreational needs of the neighborhood that it serves and be integrated into a system that serves the entire community. So you could maybe take that statement, and instead of just saying each new, if this is specifically about the MPCC, maybe just have it say, ensure that the MPCC will contribute to satisfying the recreational needs of the neighborhood that it serves and be integrated into a system that serves the entire community. And again, this is just taking language that's already been approved by the city council and the Parks and Recreation Commission as part of the plan. Kind of says the same thing, says it clearer. So that would be my recommendation here, because it sounds like that's the intent of this. Yeah, so it's and be integrated into a system that serves the entire community. And again, that's from the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan.
Now hasn't the horse left the barn with MPCC? In other words, aren't we down to programming? Isn't it specifically programming that we're discussing here?
Yes. So, I mean, you could even add like programs and services, maybe in there, just to be really clear.
So I've got ensure that the programs and services offered at the MPCC will contribute to satisfying the needs of the neighborhood it serves and be integrated into a system that serves the entire community. Does that sound okay?
I think that sounds great.
Okay.
What if we were to say that instead of serves the entire community at the end, the neighborhood it serves and be integrated to include all Menlo Park residents?
Yeah, and that's so also in the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan, there's like a phrase that's used that you might be able to borrow here, which is accessible to residents of all ages and abilities throughout the city.
Well said. Yeah.
So you could say, and be integrated into a system that is accessible to residents of all ages and abilities throughout the city.
To residents of all ages. Yeah.
Definitely residents.
So ensure that the programs and services offered at the MPCC will contribute to satisfying the needs of the neighborhood it serves and be integrated into a system that is accessible to all ages and abilities throughout the city.
To residents
To residents of all ages.
To residents of all ages.
Residents
Sorry.
of all ages, yeah.
That is why I am not an administrative assistant, because I am not that good at this stuff. So bear with me.
Yeah, that's good, guys.
Okay. So third comment was define diverse community perspectives. What does it mean? And that is this statement here, which says include diverse community perspectives. And if maybe, if I might, that maybe if we're talking about one of the comments further on from the council was to focus on resident input. Maybe we can work that into this statement somehow.
And if I could offer another, maybe even in combination with another bullet point that said, maintain relationships with residents throughout the city of Menlo Park.
Yeah.
So it could be a combined statement that's like, you know, focus on resident input, semicolon, maintain relationships with residents throughout the city of Menlo Park. You know, basically just take the suggested verbiage and use it.
I really like that.
Yeah, that's good.
So focus on resident input and maintain relationships with residents throughout the city of Menlo Park.
Yes.
Focus on resident input and maintain relationships with residents.
What do you think about foster relationships with residents? You know, foster and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
instead of maintain, foster.
Foster.
Yeah, as foster implies, you know, striking up
Active.
new relationships, whereas
Right.
maintain kind of sounds like,
Hold steady.
yeah.
Although I don't want to admit that we've not tried to do that up to this point. Continue to foster. You know, if we're first getting to fostering relationships at this point, I think we've missed some stuff.
Would grow in place of foster kind of achieve all of it? Because grow
Yeah.
implies that it exists
Yeah.
and you're also seeking to grow it.
All right. Let's see, that took care of comment 3 and 4 and 5, which was resident input. Comment 6 says, please add the statement, provide high quality programs and services for all Menlo Park residents.
And that's simple. That's the second bullet point
Right.
already, and just the word all. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
And then the next two comments were expressing the need to gather and incorporate resident input on field allocation and usage, and gather and incorporate resident input on pool operations. So
Or that could be down in specific examples, right? Like, I'm a little hesitant to be super defined in the goals, but maybe in examples, I think that those are very pertinent examples for sure. And they come up a lot, and we would be remiss not to tackle them. But I don't know, unless anyone else feels that they need to be higher up than a specific example.
If I may, it certainly is a specific example. You know, I think you might have an opportunity here to, you know, kind of combine them, because there's already gather feedback on Willow Oaks. There's already pretty much gather pros and cons of contracting out city services. And then these two additional ones are being suggested, which are field allocation and pool operations. So it's almost like maybe you could just take gather and incorporate resident input on, and then list those 4 things. And then that's just like one bullet point.
Good call, Sean.
Okay, so do you want me to put, I sort of put a part in there about through the community survey, but I can leave that in or take it out depending on what you guys think.
I think that covers it, right? I mean, you can survey in any number of ways.
You know, my suggestion would be, I think, to a reader who hasn't had the benefit of this conversation for context, it might sound like you're limiting it, like, well, the only way we're going to gather feedback is through resident input, as opposed, I mean, through the community survey, as opposed to growing relationships and all these other things. So maybe the community survey is one of the examples, right? Where you list Willow Oaks field allocation, pool operations, contracting out, and then just maybe a whole separate bullet point that is use multiple means to accomplish this, such as community survey. So I worry that if you put community survey at the front, it'll make it seem like you're limiting it to just that tool. And one of the pieces of feedback we've heard from council pretty regularly is it's gotta be in paper, it's gotta be online, it's gotta be in English, it's gotta be in Spanish, you gotta go door to door, you gotta do flyers, you gotta do all, you know, the whole universe of outreach.
May I ask a question? If this is under specific examples, Willow Oaks Park improvements, that's pretty specific. Field allocation and usage, what is specific about field allocation and usage?
That's
Yeah, we have
specifically the
fields.
policy, there is a policy for athletic field use. So maybe get more specific and we'll just call that the athletic field use policy. But that's what the council member was referring to.
So don't we have more than one field? We have fields, correct? Athletic fields use policy? No? I mean, I guess I'm trying to, are we specifying a particular field, or are we looking at all the fields?
I think saying fields is it's clearer, because it is referencing, it's a policy that just governs all of the athletic fields under the city's domain, and like how do like long-term users like little leagues and soccer leagues kind of get their schedule. And I think the policy is singular, but saying fields is more clear to, again, to the reader who's just looking at this without context.
And what's great about pool operations is that we only have, what, we have 2 pools now? Or there are more?
We only have one right now.
One.
Or one pool complex now, but we will have 2
Okay.
complexes.
We will have 2, yes, okay.
Yes. So did you, I was
I would
trying to
put
type there for a
pros and
second.
I
Go
would,
ahead,
I would
Sean.
put pros and cons of contracting out city service.
weighing the pros and cons of contracting out city services?
Well, this is specifically under gather and incorporate resident input
Oh, I'm sorry, of course. of
on,
course.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, how does the commission feel about the changes so far?
Good.
So what we have now, just to review,
Mhm.
so we have as goals, facilitate the goals laid out in the 2019 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, provide high-quality programs and services for all Menlo Park residents, maintain, upgrade, and modify existing programs and facilities to meet developing community needs, enhance public awareness and engagement, focus on resident input and grow relationships with residents throughout the city of Menlo Park, prioritize accessibility, safety, and sustainability. And then in specific examples, we have gather and incorporate resident input on Willow Oaks Park improvements, athletic fields use policy, pool operations, pros and cons of contracting out city services, review the pickleball court additions, invite members of the public on commission park tours, ensure that the programs and services offered at the MPCC will contribute to satisfying the needs of the neighborhood it serves, and be integrated into a system that is accessible to residents of all ages and abilities throughout the city, and develop strategies to mitigate the risks of off-leash dogs harming children.
Mhm.
All right.
This looks good. We got some good work done.
I agree. I'll
At
stop
this
sharing for the moment. Go ahead. Sorry.
Does anyone have any edits or changes or other comments you'd like to make to the plan? I do not see any. So at this point, would a commissioner like to make a motion to recommend the revised work plan for city council approval? Feel free to raise your hand and make the motion.
I move that we approve the changes.
Thank you, Mark. And do I have a second for the stated motion?
I'll second Mark.
Thank you, Peter. Rondell, would you like to take a vote?
Yes, so we will be voting on the revised work plan that we just discussed. So let's take a vote. Commissioner Terrio, how do you vote?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Commissioner Bryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bronson,
Yes.
Commissioner Baskin,
Yes.
and Commissioner Deacon Brown.
Yes.
So the revised work plan has passed unanimously. So we're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work, everyone. This is great. I like the specific examples as well. So it gets us ready to continue our work on some of these projects. Up next on the agenda, we have informational items. So informational items are transmitted to the Parks and Recreation Commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question to clarify any of these informational items. So the first one is the city council report. And the Library and Community Services Director, Sean Reinhart, will introduce this item.
Yes, basically this item was just advising the commission about last night's city council item related to renewing the aquatics operator agreement at Burgess Pool. The current operator is Team Sheeper Inc. They've been there, I think, since 2005. Their agreement for operating the pool is expiring August 31st. There's quite a bit of backstory. It's in the report. I'll summarize by saying that last night, the city council did authorize the city manager to execute a 1-year extension of their agreement at Burgess Pool through August 31st of next year, 2023, to which Team Sheeper is agreeable and will sign it. And then the next step really in the aquatics process is the study session and potential RFP for a pool operator for both pools as part of the MPCC opening. So good news, the Burgess Pool will keep going with Team Sheeper for another year until that process is completed.
Sean, did I hear you say that there will be a later approval for an operator for both pools? In other words, it's already been decided that there will be a singular operator for both pools?
Well, City Council gave direction to staff in February about that and said that, you know, their desire is for there to be a single operator if possible. However, you know, they are going through an analysis and then a request for proposals, and will make the final determination at the end of that process. But the intent is to have one operator for both pools.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other, actually, Rondell, do we have any public comments on this item?
At this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify staff by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. And looking the moment, I do not see any comments.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions about the Tim Sheeper agreement and anything relating to aquatics? Well, thank you very much for the update on that. We now moving on, Assistant Library Services Director Nick Sheddo will introduce the onboarding of new commission members. There are staff report notes on this as well. I'll let you present before asking for public comment.
It'll be a short presentation. So thank you, Vice Chair Baskin. I just pulled together a kind of a resource list for new commissioners primarily, but it might hopefully be useful for existing commissioners, just to kind of remind you of some of the resources that we have to rely on, those sort of founding documents and foundational documents for the commission: Parks and Rec Master Plan, Department Strategic Plan, various other master planning documents, and just hopefully pull it together and have it available for new commissioners every year, and hopefully you find it useful.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
At this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify the staff by using that raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. And Vice Chair Baskin, I do not see any comments.
Great, thank you. And one other thing I'd love to offer up also as a tenured member, if anyone has any questions, you know, of historically, just kind of what we've been working on or wanted to catch up. I know at one point previously, and this is, you know, mostly for you, Kelsey, but Mayrin, if she's reviewing the minutes from this, she might hear about this. We had done park tours in kind of teams to learn about the parks. Those were written up and recorded and presented. We also talked about possibly doing commissioner buddy systems where, you know, a commissioner, a more tenured commissioner could help get a newer commissioner up to speed on some items, or just kind of where you can find things, or introducing them to other members of city council or other commissioners across across city government. So historically we've had, and they normally actually did this in May, gatherings where they recognize commissioners or abilities for us to kind of get to know members of city staff personally. So to the extent that we can offer any more of a personal touch or just kind of, conversations in a one-on-one fashion, I'm sure, please feel free to reach out about that. And thank you so much for providing more of a structure to onboarding new members. Does anyone else have any questions on this item?
Not a question, but I was just going to say that this was very useful. So I think this is great. One maybe suggestion for the future. It was a somewhat long list, so it may help with a sort of ranking system of like, hey, these are the really key important things to know, and kind of here are the things to review, but it may be helpful to come back to these as topics come up. But yeah, overall, I thought this was great, and potentially like a ranked system to highlight the most important items could be really helpful.
Good point. Thank you. I think my librarian sort of comprehensiveness gene kicked in there is probably why I made a long list, but I like your idea of ranking the things that seem most important.
Thank you for those, Kelsey. So moving on, we have the Parks and Recreation Commission tentative agenda calendar that was sent as an attachment. Do we have any public comments on this item? And I guess we can bring it up onto the screen if that's possible.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Baskin. I thought there was another item on updating recreation facility use guidelines. I think I misnumbered it, perhaps. Maybe that might have confused you. Sorry about that.
I did. I got confused. No, it's right here in order, and I, for some reason, skipped it. So yes, before we do that, let's talk about the updated recreation facility use guidelines. And Assistant Library Services Director Nick Sheddo will introduce this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Baskin. From time to time, staff bring facility use guidelines updates to the commissions. This particular use guidelines had been seen by the commission before, and we added a couple of more changes to additions to the facility use guidelines. I could pull it up in this if you'd like from the staff report. Just to note that we did receive an emailed public comment on this item from Jennifer Johnson. I think it was sent directly to the commissioners as well, but I have that available if you'd like to look at it. Maybe I'll just pull up the report and we can look at the guidelines. Here we are. Basically, there's a sort of some language that adds that visiting a facility constitutes acceptance of those guidelines, and acknowledging staff's right to sort of take action while interpreting those guidelines for facility visitors. Everything in a facility, I think Sean has said this before, everything in a facility use guideline usually has a story behind it. And the story behind this one is that there were some behaviors, some unwanted behaviors that were taking place outside of but adjacent to some of our facilities. So that's why this language was inserted. And then further down here, there's a section on events. And this language was put in kind of addressing some behaviors, some unwanted behaviors during virtual events, primarily during library virtual events, but we are a combined department now. And so that's why that language was inserted. And then just a note that these changes, recommended changes were seen and recommended by the Library Commission at their April meeting. With that, I'll stop the share, but I'm happy to pull that back up if commissioners want to take a look at it.
I think at this point, we'll first ask for any public comments on this item. I know that you did mention that there was one email that was sent. It was sent to all of us, so we were able to have seen that. And if there is any public comment on the phone at this time.
Okay, so at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify the staff by using the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. At the moment, there are no public comments.
Are there any comments or questions from commissioners on this item?
Jennifer, I was hoping to just clarify, having read Jennifer's email, she alluded to a tone in the email, and I'm not sure that I understand what that means. Can anybody explain that to me?
I think I can jump in and feel that that's a great question.
Thank you,
Commissioner Bryman, and thanks for bringing it up. I think from what I gather, Ms. Johnson's kind of overall kind of perspective was that all the facilities, all the parks, everything about the experience should be as welcoming as possible to residents. And a policy like this, even at the very top statement under purposes, we strive to provide a safe, welcoming, pleasant, comfortable environment for all visitors. Then it kind of goes on to talk about prohibited conduct and like the steps that will be taken if that conduct is violated. And I think she took exception to, a couple of kind of phrases that seemed a little harsh. On the one hand, we do want to have welcoming facilities, but also one way we do that is by having rules that are fair and that are, designed to kind of make the facilities welcome to everyone. But I think she raised a couple of, one point in particular that I think was really well taken. And I'd like to recommend that there be one change to what's shown here as in response. And it's the first revision under purpose where it says visit, and this is in the red text, visiting a City of Menlo Park recreation facility, including the premises and grounds outside a recreation facility, or participating in an event or program constitutes an implicit acceptance of these guidelines. That's fine. And my recommendation would be to stop there and put a period, because the rest of that sentence is what Ms. Johnson said, that seems a little arbitrary and there's enforcement actions later. So to strike the part that says, and an acknowledgement of the right of City of Menlo Park to take action, any action they see fit while interpreting these guidelines, just strike that. And I think that's where, I think she had a valid point, which is that seems a little too open to interpretation. You've got some very specific stuff in this policy, just let that speak for itself. Then further down under the events, she had kind of recommended, it wasn't clear from the formatting. I think she wanted to really shrink that down into like a recommendation about, people may be shut down from virtual events and keep it much more simple. But in this case, there were some very specific incidents that we kind of need this level of clarification about when unidentified visitors to a Zoom program that has children in it, has minors in it. We need, just like we do with in-person programs for children, if like a random adult is in there, we need them to identify, are you here with a child? And if not, then we need to leave. And so this is basically just spelling out that in the virtual environment, that also is the case. And since the virtual is there are a lot of different ways you can, tools to mute someone or push them out of the meeting. we wanted to be very explicit about, here are some of the steps that would be taken, so that people know. And so I would really recommend kind of keeping that language, and the library commission did accept this language, just with the understanding that it's really to protect against Zoom bombing and stalking and some other things that could happen in Zoom meetings. And we want to empower the host to be able to, end that so it doesn't harm the other participants.
Thanks for the clarification, Sean. Yeah, I think in that first paragraph, you're absolutely right. I mean, this whole concept of policing it, and I'm going to be a vigilante, and I'm going to take care of the guy who's whose dog is barking too loudly is a little absurd. We should leave it at, these are the rules, and it's implied that you're going to follow the rules. Simple as that. I wonder though, on the second one where we're keeping the language in, or you're suggesting that we do, it seems to me that as we get more and more specific, where does it end? In other words, okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can mute you, we can this, we can, I mean, it seems like there is sort of no end to the specificity of what it is that we might be able to do to you online or otherwise. I wonder if we can sort of shorten that, and we can refer to another document that in fact spells out what those things are.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I think, it kind of does get at sort of what the balance we're trying to strike, because there isn't really another city document that we can point to related to, we could mute attendees, or we could lock the program after the event has begun and not let new attendees come in, or dismiss participants. And this is very much limited to like a virtual event. But, I think the point's well taken. And, one thing we could do, there are 3 paragraphs here in this section. We could just eliminate that 3rd paragraph that talks about like the specific Zoom steps of muting and all that. And so basically it would just leave it, which I think is really the key thing here, is that youth events are created for participating youth and their caretakers, and adults who are not accompanying a youth participant may be asked to leave the event,
Done.
virtually or in person.
I agree. Yeah, that seems to be more to the point.
Just to make it clear that is our policy, and we can leave off, the details about muting and whatnot, if that works better for the commission.
I think it does.
So I kind of see some heads nodding. So I don't think a vote's necessarily needed, but we can go ahead and make that change.
Any other commissioners with comments on this item? Thank you. I appreciate both sides of, I appreciate Jennifer's comments and really bringing that forward. But I also understand, having seen kind of a lot of the commentary sometimes I get from the public are just community members verbally, but then also I see Nextdoor posts and sort of other social media ways that people have reached out and kind of discussed what's going on. So I very much understand in the public places there have been some behavior that just, is unacceptable. And we just want to make sure we're in some ways more vigilant about ensuring everyone's comfort and safety, and that it's a comfortable place for everyone. So appreciate very much those guidelines and that update. And now correctly moving on to the Parks and Recreation Commission tentative agenda calendar. So we have this up here. Are there any public comments on this item?
So at this time, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please notify staff by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you are dialing in, you can use the *9 to engage the raise hand function. And looking through the participants and attendees, there are no public comments.
Great. So it looks like we have some items that, are there any unscheduled items here?
Nick, can you scroll down a little bit?
Okay, so we have policy review, athletic field use, that's great. Commemorative park amenities. I do think that we do need pickleball, because we were revisiting, there were a couple of things I think we owe it to revisit that are part of our plan, pickleball. And then I always like to know and keep in touch with what's going on with the youth advisory group.
I can add those.
Great.
Point of clarification. At our next meeting, the top item is commission work plan. What did we just do?
Yeah, I don't think we have to revisit that again. I think it's more of that might be left over because it was sort of or a precursor to presenting it in September. But if we've already just got over it, I don't think we need to do it again in August.
It seems to me, I mean, we did it and we voted on it. So
Yep, I think that's just that's a clerical error, we'll call it.
Well, I will also just commend the commission for working out the work plan tonight. I think it was entirely possible that you might have had to pick it up again next month. So great job, everybody.
again, just a point of clarification, on the unscheduled future items, does that mean that they can't be popped into an agenda for a meeting that has not yet happened? In other words,
it's just sort of a commission, chair-elect, Bryman. It's just sort of a parking lot for issues that we haven't placed on the agenda for an actual meeting, but we don't want to lose sight of them. It's one of those sort of like, we need to look at this at some point in the future, but we're not sure with the way things are moving around with what the council is considering and other issues that are coming up, where to put them yet. So that's what that unscheduled future items area is for.
and what is it that Jennifer suggested about some pickleball review or?
Yeah, I think we had in previous meetings where we were reviewing the pickleball pilot program, committed to coming back and looking at the pickleball usage again. And there was a lot of public comments at commission meetings, and also some that we've been seeing coming in through the community survey that have been asking for permanent installations of pickleball or expansion of pickleball courts. So I think that's the item that Chair Baskin was alluding to.
No, understood, but did we decide as to that being an agenda item or not?
It's an agenda item, but because staff will have to do some work, given some of the feedback that was given by the pickleball community and also
Thank you.
kind of gathering. So it's more, these are sort of the way we do this, and this will be great for you to know. Here are the big picture items. Here are the commitments we may have made to the community. And it gives staff kind of like a runway of how and when they can provide enough information for us to then be able to really agendize it. And it's okay for there to be gaps, because sometimes things come up from city council meetings or emails to us, or just timeline funds things that then need to come ahead. So there are some things here, even though it may look empty, that will then come as part of it. It's trickled down from city council.
So those then should go on the unscheduled future items, correct?
Yes, they do.
Yes, and the chair typically meets with staff like a week in advance of the next meeting. And then often at that point, there can be a conversation, although the commission could have it right now if you want, about like, well, let's get some things off of unscheduled and let's start plugging them in. So this might come back next month and some of these things would actually be scheduled at that point. And then while I'm talking, there's one other item that I would like to recommend probably for next month would be reviewing the results of the recreation program survey. And that might be a good prelude to a pickleball conversation at a future meeting, because there are some questions about tennis and pickleball in there.
Sounds good.
Does anyone else have any other comments or additions you'd like to add to the agenda?
Sean, do we need to formally add that, or can that you just add that to the next meeting?
But yeah, it's kind of generally just done by acclamation. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, then, excellent. Do any commissioners have an individual commission report? So for some of our newer folks, we generally try each month, and normally we kind of schedule this, so that's something that maybe we might want to revisit, and we could add as an agenda topic of maybe more formally putting each commissioner attached to a month, and they could either decide ahead of time and let us know, or just inform us if they change their mind of a topic they would like to present to the commission. So I'll just do an example for myself. Attending one of these lovely summer Wednesday night concerts at Fremont Park. If you've attended that, you can then come back to the commission and say, here's some feedback on it. This is what I felt. This is what I talked to people about. And all this is just really helpful to, give other commissioners a flavor as to what's going on if they haven't been able to attend. Just and some accountability, and kind of also shows, you'll definitely see on the commission, different people have different interests and what areas, on the basis of maybe where they are in their lives, what they participate in the community, because you're obviously not expected to attend everything or go to every park. So maybe for our next meeting, we might want to consider getting back into a schedule of things and saying, for example, Jen Baskin could report at, say, August meeting or September, and then we kind of rotate and take turns. And if you even want to mention a topic that you're interested in, that you're preparing ahead of time, you can either choose to prepare it vocally. Some people sometimes maybe put together a slide and have some visuals, but it's really as little as you want to do, or as big as you want to make a commissioner report. So if someone wants to share something this meeting off the cuff, happy to hear it. And if not, we can save it for a more scheduled time. Please use raise hand feature if you'd like to.
Jennifer, since you brought it up, and forgive me for not knowing this if we've already discussed it, but speaking of the concert series at Fremont, what's going on with that? Why, if I missed them all this year, or has it been suspended, or? And again, I'm sorry.
Well, funny you asked. I can let staff continue on, but I will tell you this, that there is a robust schedule. If you do go on the City of Menlo Park website, they have the musicians listed. It is a lovely, robust, interesting, diverse group of musicians. Wednesday night at Fremont Park, I happened to run into Sean at one of them when I was walking through with my daughter. Really, nicely attended outside. People look like they're really enjoying, and the music is really good. And so yes, they are in effect. And
I'm sorry that I missed. When did that begin?
Last week, maybe weeks.
I can speak on that, Chair Bryman. So it started on the 13th of July at Fremont Park, and it's every Wednesday for the, so today is actually the third concert series. And they'll have 5 at Fremont Park total. So there'll be 2 more after this. And then there'll be an additional 2 that'll happen at in Bellhaven at Bellhaven school kind of pilot park. So in the Bellhaven district. So we have about 2 more of these concerts at Fremont Park. They're every Wednesday, 6 to 8. Like like Commissioner Baskin said, they're really fun and entertaining. So I encourage everyone to get out there and check it out.
Well, that's great, guys. I'm sorry that I was a little lax because I've enjoyed it for years, and for some reason I didn't realize it was back on. I thought I had just missed much of that, but it didn't start till July 13th. Rondell, who books these acts, these bands?
So it's our LCS supervisor, Natalia Jones. And so she's in charge of events. And so she's the one that's been kind of booking everyone and getting the events going. So she will be the point of contact for all events from community services and library.
Natalia Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Do we have any other questions or comments from anyone else in the commission? Well, thank you so much, everyone. It is now 8:11 and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening. Good
Have
to
a
see
great
you all.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.